Hello art friends, and welcome back to Paperlicious Design Studio. Melisa here. Today I've got a couple of sweet little birds to share with you. I've always loved using stencils, but in the past I used them to add texture or interest to my backgrounds. The last couple of months I've been exploring using them as my focal point. So an example would be my Imagine layout. Let's see, there it is. And that's where I showed you how to do embossing with stencils. And then the other one was my flamingo layout. It's in here somewhere. They're flamingoing together somewhere. Haha. Okay, not funny. There they are. All right. And I really like this one so much that I decided to try to search for more stencils that would work as a focal point. Now, I don't know about you, but I've spent a lot of time shopping for my art supplies at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, and even Amazon. And COVID-19 and social isolating kind of pushed me to start looking for places to shop online. And I come across a great shop called Red Lead Paperworks. Fell in love with their products, and I've placed 2 orders with them. And I just have to say, the customer service, all the little extras that they put into it were just awesome. So I not only like their products, but I like their company as well. Now, I'm not getting paid anything. I don't get any bonuses for you checking them out. There's no affiliate program or anything like that. I just liked them and I like their customer service. So at the end of today's video, I'm adding some extra footage of me unpacking my order, and I'll just show you how they go the extra mile to make you feel like they value you as a customer. So if you've got time and want to watch that far, stay tuned for that. So for today's project, I'm using 3 stencils from their store, as well as a paper pack. I used 1 sheet. It's a 10-page paper pack. And they sell a lot of collage packets or collage pages, but this doesn't fall under that heading. If you're looking for this, they're calling it a coloring pages. Let me just kind of flip through real quick and give you an idea of what's in here. I can't remember if they show you everything on their site or not. For some reason I'm thinking they don't show you every page. Some music paper. Cute stuff. And what I love about this is that the background is white. Alright, so that's that. Plus you can see in my background the sheet that I used. And I got the stamp set from them, and I used the Trust Your Wings out of this set. Also, before I did this project, I did some practicing just using the stencils and using different colors with my distress inks. And so I think I'm going to put that together and post it as a separate video in a day or 2. So look out for that if you're interested in seeing some different coloring options with these. Alright, so let's get started with the tutorial part of the video. I start by trimming and adhering the ephemera from the Vintage Birds paper pack I showed you in the intro. I'm using matte medium, not to be confused with matte gel. One of the differences is the consistency. The matte medium is thin and works great for adhering thin paper. And I really like that I can just squirt it out real quick and brayer it down. So I'm always pushing the limits and trying to use it with thicker paper. It's kind of pricey, so I probably should try a glue stick. Sometimes if it's not glued down completely, I add a little more around the edges or corners. And then sometimes I just grab my Aleene's tacky glue and add that around the edges and corners. Next, I started adding color with distress inks. I used broken china and twisted citron. I like to mix it up. Sometimes I use acrylic paint, and that would be more opaque, meaning you can't see through it. In comparison, watercolors and distress inks are less opaque, meaning they're more translucent, and you can see what's behind them. My placement of color wasn't totally random. Off camera, I had already decided where I was going to place the birds and the nest. I'd already decided I wanted the eggs and part of the birds to be blue, so I wanted more green underneath those images. See those little splotches? That's where I think I got some of the matte medium on top of the paper, and so it's resisting the color. So I kind of like how that turned out. It gave it more of a distressed look. I'm done with that layer. It's dried, and now I bet you can guess what the next step is. Yep, I'm going to knock it back. Adding acrylic paint and or gesso will give it more of a distressed look and mute the background a little. I always want the focal points to be the star of the show. Now this process is a little more random. However, many times I have a focal point cluster, or in this case, I'd already practiced and trimmed out my focal point and was able to bring them back into the layout to help me decide where I might want to cover some of the first two layers. For instance, later when I put the bird and the nest on the left page, notice how the color in front of the little bird is mostly cream. That helped him to pop off the page a little better. So while you're watching this section, I want to chat with you for a minute and invite you to swap a 3x5 index card with me. I've already swapped with one of my other followers. Her name's J. Nikki, and it was so much fun to get something in the mail besides junk mail and bills. I've actually altered a little box and put some cute dividers in it, and I would love to fill it up with cards from all over the world. If you're interested, please don't feel like your art isn't good enough. Just put your heart into it, and I would love an encouraging quote on the back if you have one to share. Connecting with others who also enjoy mixed media is fun for me, and receiving happy mail can be an encouragement and help me get through a long work week. So if you're interested, send me an email. I'll post the email in the description box below the video. Just click the Show More button. So the first red lead paperwork stencil I'm using is called Bird Nest. It took me multiple layers to get the different shades that I wanted in the nest. I just kept working it till I got the look that I wanted. I started with acrylic paint. I just picked out a lighter shade and a darker shade. You can just use cheap stuff. There's nothing special about this paint. And I had actually cut off some smaller pieces of a larger sponge so that I could maybe control where I was pouncing the paint on. But I was already starting to get it on the leaf area, so I used masking tape to try to cover those areas up so I wouldn't get brown on them. And when I dipped a little piece of the sponge in the paint, it would have too much paint on it. So I would pounce it on a piece of scrap paper, trying to get some of the paint off before I pounced it over the stencil. If you have too much paint on the sponge, it tends to seep under the stencil and you won't have crisp lines. So I finished covering all the areas that I don't want brown paint on, and I'm ready to resume working on the nest. A stencil like this one has a lot of little details that can be easily damaged by rubbing back and forth against them. I messed mine up in a few places, and in the future I'll try to remember that pouncing is better and to avoid rubbing back and forth, especially against the little details. I like to keep my stencils clean, so I keep a bowl of water next to me, and I just drop them in there till later when I have more time to clean up, and it makes cleanup a lot easier. If the acrylic paint does dry on it, you can still get it off. You just use a little scrub sponge, like one you do your dishes with. However, I have to share that my bowl was on the floor, and a couple of weekends ago I was going through stencils pretty quick, trying some different techniques on some 3x5 index cards. And so when I was done, I would just drop them in the bowl. I came back the next day and they were on the floor. My cat had dragged them out. So I threw one more back in there, and she did it again, crazy cat. So I finished pouncing on the lighter brown, and now I'm going back and pouncing on some of the darker here and there. I'm just randomly doing this. I have no idea how it's going to turn out until I pull the stencil off. Now I decided I wanted the gaps to be a lighter color brown. I immediately realized it would have been great to pounce the lighter brown on first as a filler. But how could I do that? I wouldn't want to apply the paint beyond the areas outside the nest. So I decided creating a mask was the solution, and when I use this stencil in the future, I'll start with that step first. I created the mask off camera by laying the stencil over some printer paper, pouncing some ink around the outermost areas of the nest, and then I cut out the nest. But I should have created a mask to cover up those eggs as well. So now you see me wiping the brown off that area. In the future, that's what I'll do, is I'll have a little mask over that area as well. So now I covered up all of the first step where I used the medium and the darker brown to pounce in the lines, and I got to go back and do that again. Oh my, we're all learning from my mistakes in this video. This will be much easier for us when we use this stencil in the future. I'm watching myself putting that masking tape on again, and I want to yell, no, stop, just use the mask that you just created. Well, that's how we all learn and get better, right? You try it and then you figure out an easier way to do it next time. Now this video is going to end up being a lot longer than my videos normally are, but I didn't want to cut out how I was creating the nest, all the little steps. I wanted you to be able to learn from my mistakes and see every little detail. And if it's too much, you can always fast forward. But even though I had to do the acrylic paint steps more than once, I really like how this nest turned out. I think it was worth it. So at this point, I've got 3 different shades of brown on there, and I'm determined that I'm going to turn this mess into a nest. So I drug out the acrylic paint pens. Now always keep in mind that I'm allowing those layers to dry before I start more layers. And you don't see that because I cut that out to make the video shorter. Luckily, acrylic paint does not take long to dry though. Now I'm working on the eggs. I want to get those little spots on there. Again, I'm watching this and thinking, oh my, why am I making this so complicated? Here I go with the masking tape again. What I should have done is just got my green acrylic paint pens out and just colored inside the stencil. Well, there was nothing new to watch there. All I did was mask off areas that I didn't want green paint on, pounced on the green paint on the leaf areas, removed the masking tape, and here we are now. All the acrylic paint is dry at this point, and I was ready to color my eggs, so I used broken china distress ink and just rubbed that on. So now it's time to start working on our first little bird. I'm going to start by applying some black soot distress ink with an applicator. Next up is weathered wood distress ink, and it's kind of a grayish blue color. I'm switching back to the black soot to add some shadows. And I just kind of go back and forth between the black and the gray, just trying to get some dimension. And now I'm just trying to fill in the gaps with the gray ink. And this is the broken china again. That doesn't really look like broken china though. I know I used broken china in the background, and the color on the eggs and the bird look almost a little more green blue, like it could be Mermaid Lagoon. It's making me wonder if I accidentally picked up the wrong sponge for the applicator and maybe it already had some Mermaid Lagoon on it. Either way, I like how the eggs and the little belly of the bird turned out. And now I'm using the black soot again to kind of get those dark lines around the outside of the bird. I have to tell you, I really enjoyed this process. I love birds. I have backyard birds, and it's kind of fun to bring them inside and into my journal. I used a little wipey right there to knock that blue back a little bit, try to blend it with the gray, and I love how it turned out. It was just kind of modeled there now. I just used a white gel pen to add a little highlight to his eye. Now I'm going in with a black Posca pen and adding some more detail to the nest. And I think all these different layers is what made the nest look good to me. I really love how it turned out. Now I'm using the Posca pen to do some doodling around the little bird. Now I'm kind of doodling and outlining the eggs. And this is the black soot distress ink. The name of this stencil is Three Birds from Red Lead Paperworks. I used the same technique to create the bird on the right, but I didn't like the results because I overdid it on the doodling. So in a minute you're going to see how I fix that. And now I'm doodling around the leaves. I'm using a black micron pen. You have to be really careful with these. They clog really easy when you doodle over the acrylic paint. So what you're seeing me do is scribble every now and then to help keep the tip clean. I've actually ruined quite a few of these pens doing this. You would think I would learn. So honestly, I don't recommend you use the micron pen for doing this. Alright, so now you're seeing how I fixed the bird on the right. I actually just redid the stenciling again on a piece of copy paper, trimmed it out, and glued it over the one I didn't like. So at this point, I was liking how the birds and the nest looked, but it felt like it just needed something else. I started looking through my floral stamp binder and found a floral image that was small enough to add. Most of my stamps are old and no longer available for purchase, but you don't have to use the exact same image I do. You can search online for a free printable, collage some flowers from pattern paper, use a sticker, or just simply draw a flower. The floral image I used is from Gina K Designs, and immediately that yellow added so much more to the layout. I also found a stamp image that was a tiny branch with the little leaves. This image is from Stamping Up. You could easily replicate this by drawing a small branch and some leaves. I think the little green leaves really add a lot and pop off the nest nicely. The only other thing I wasn't loving about the layout was that the nest just felt like it was kind of floating. So I thought if I added some more color, some distress lines underneath it, that it would help ground it to the edge of the page. I'm using a stamp image that you've seen me use before on some of my other videos to just kind of grunge it up around the edges. It's actually a corner stamp, and right here I'm showing you how I cleaned one side of it and only applied ink to the other side so that I could use it on the areas where there's not a corner. I used brown and black ink by palette. It's from a set made by Red Rubber Designs. It's called Background Grunge, and you can find her on Etsy. And again, you don't have to have this exact stamp to get this look, although for me it was faster. You could use a marker or even paint to add some little random marks and lines and dots around the edges. Now I'm adding a little more grunge and texture to my background using another stamp by Red Rubber Designs. It's part of a set called Vintage Backgrounds. I think it has a total of 5 images in it, and I like the variety. The particular one I'm using has got some small numbers. There's also a script, I think a grid, and also a section of music notes or music paper. But as I've mentioned in other videos, notice that I don't put it on a block. That's because I don't want to stamp the whole image. I'm just tapping the ink on here and there, and then using my fingers to only put pressure in certain areas behind the stamp, so I just get a partial image. It's pretty easy to find a stamp that you could use to substitute to do this. I recently bought a couple that are made by Prima. They're very small. They only cost a couple of dollars, and they work great for this technique. And I actually have been saving them to use in a giveaway. And I totally didn't plan this, but you know what? Let's start with this video. check the description box below and I will have all the information for the giveaway. This stamp set is also from Red Lead Paperworks. The outline word phrases that I put on a few minutes ago are from a really old roll of washi tape by Illustrated Faith. And I just had an even better idea. I'll also make some of the washi tape, some of that yellow trim, and I'll go ahead and pre-color and add the flowers and the branch and leaves into the giveaway as well. So if you're inspired by this video, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. Click the Show More button in the description box to check out all the details for the giveaway. And stay tuned for the extra footage of me unpacking my order from Red Lead Paperworks and check out why I think they have great customer service. Hello art friends, Melisa here. Before I get started on today's project, I just want to share some products I recently received from Red Lead Paperworks. Normally I wouldn't share something like this, but they put such a personal touch on how they mail you your products that I just couldn't help but show you. So starting with their envelope, you can see how they have stamped some of the images from their stamp line. And then, first I'll show you what I bought. So my purchase included this music collage paper. I think there's about 10 sheets in there. A couple of stencils. And a few stamp sets. Aren't these beautiful? Love, love. I'm so excited. I can't wait to use these. And then, that was what I purchased. But then in addition to that, they added some freebies. Again, hand stamped with their images from their stamp line. And inside, they included this cute little pocket. Some cute tags, some idea cards for using their products, a vellum envelope, and a free printable. So if you get a minute, hop on over to Red Lead Paperworks and check them out. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.